Have you ever loved someone so deeply, only to be pushed away when they needed you the most? This is the story of a mother, a woman who gave everything to her son, only to be betrayed in the most heartbreaking way. When her son banned her from his wedding but still sent her the bill for nearly $80,000, she thought her world had ended. But what followed was a journey of truth, forgiveness, and redemption. A story that reminds us all that love, no matter how broken, can find its way back home. So, grab a cup of tea, settle in, and let me tell you the story of "My son banned me from his wedding, but sent me a bill for $80,000 to pay for the wedding and honeymoon." The morning started like any other, quiet, lonely, and far too still for my liking. The coffee machine hummed softly as I leaned against the kitchen counter, watching the last few drops fall into my chipped mug. My house, once filled with laughter and chaos, now echoed with silence. It had been 5 years since the divorce. 5 long years since I'd seen my son, Ethan, truly smile at me. The truth was, our relationship hadn't survived the fallout. After his mother, Claire, and I separated, Ethan slowly pulled away, like the tide retreating from the shore. At first, it was subtle, a missed call here, a short text there. Then, one day, nothing. No calls. No visits. No "Happy birthday, Dad." Just silence. I told myself he needed time, that he'd come around eventually. But deep down, I knew I was losing him, piece by piece. I was halfway through my coffee when my phone buzzed on the table. It was a message from my sister, Elaine. "Elaine, did you see the pictures? The engagement looks beautiful." I frowned, my brow creasing. Engagement? I opened the photo she'd sent. There he was, Ethan, my son, standing in front of a lake, smiling from ear to ear, his hand holding that of a woman I'd never met. A glimmering diamond ring sparkled on her finger. My breath caught in my throat. My son was engaged. And I had to find out from a text message. Scrolling through social media, I saw dozens of comments congratulating them. Friends, relatives, even people I barely recognized. The caption beneath the post read, "She said yes. Can't wait to spend forever with my best friend." And there it was, hundreds of likes, emojis, and well wishes. But nothing for me. No call. No message. "No, Dad, I'm getting married." I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, waiting for my phone to ring, waiting for him to reach out. It never did. Over the next few months, the wedding updates poured in online. Engagement parties, cake tastings, dress fittings, and every single one of them reminded me that I wasn't a part of it. It was like watching someone else live the life I was supposed to be in. I told myself not to be bitter. I told myself that maybe he'd invite me eventually, that maybe, once the dust settled, we'd patch things up. But the truth came crashing down one cold Tuesday morning. I was going through emails when I saw it, an unfamiliar subject line that read, "Wedding expenses, from Ethan." My heart skipped. Finally. Maybe he was reaching out. Maybe this was his way of reconnecting. I opened it. "Dad, I've decided that it would be best if you didn't attend the wedding. It's going to be a small, private ceremony, and I don't want any tension. However, as my father, I think it's fair for you to contribute financially. Attached is the wedding budget. You'll find the total is around $80,000, including the honeymoon expenses. I trust you'll handle it. Ethan." For a moment, I just sat there, staring at the screen. My eyes went over the words again and again, hoping I'd misread them. But they didn't change. He wasn't inviting me. He was billing me. I scrolled down to the attached spreadsheet. It was itemized, clean, and clinical. Venue, $15,000. Catering, $12,000. Wedding dress, $7,000. Photography, $4,500. Honeymoon, Bora Bora, $20,000. Miscellaneous, $21,500. Total, $80,000. It wasn't just a request, it was an invoice. My chest tightened. My son, my little boy who once ran into my arms after every scraped knee, who cried when I left for business trips, had turned into a stranger. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of every mistake I'd ever made pressing down on me. Was this my fault? Had I really been such a terrible father that he saw me as nothing more than a wallet? The truth was, I hadn't always been there for Ethan. When Claire and I split, things got messy. The fights, the lawyers, the blame, it all took a toll. I tried to keep visiting him, to stay involved, but Claire made it hard. She never said it outright, but she made sure I knew I wasn't welcome. And over time, Ethan started to believe her version of the story, that I was selfish, that I'd walked away, that I didn't care. He never knew how many nights I sat awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if he'd ever forgive me. And now it seemed he never would. I closed my laptop and walked to the living room. The house felt colder than usual. On the shelf above the fireplace sat a framed photo of us, Ethan at age 8, grinning proudly in his Little League uniform, my arm around his shoulder. Back then, he used to call me his hero. Now, he couldn't even call me his father. I sank onto the couch and rubbed my temples. Part of me wanted to delete the email, pretend I'd never seen it. Another part wanted to write back and unleash every ounce of pain and anger I'd bottled up for years. But what good would that do? I picked up my pen and a piece of paper instead. My hands trembled slightly as I began to write. Ethan, I received your email. I won't lie, it hurt to read. I understand if you don't want me at the wedding. I truly do. Maybe I deserve that. But asking me to pay for something I'm not welcome to be part of, that's not fair. I'm not angry, son. Just sad. Because somewhere along the way, we lost each other. I won't be sending money. Not because I don't care, but because I'd rather rebuild what we had first. If you ever want to talk about the past, about us, I'll always be here. Love, Dad. I folded the letter carefully and mailed it the next morning. For the next 2 weeks, I checked my inbox every day. Nothing. Then, one evening, my phone buzzed. It was an email. From Ethan. Dad, don't play the victim. You missed out on enough of my life already. The least you can do is help fund my new beginning. You're either paying, or I'll assume you're done with me for good. Ethan. My heart sank. So that was it. All those years of love, bedtime stories, and birthdays came down to one ultimatum. Pay or lose him forever. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching the rain hit the glass, my mind replaying every memory of Ethan's childhood. His first bike. His first day of school. The time he made me a Father's Day card with the words, "You're my hero." When did it all start to fade? Somewhere between the divorce papers and the silent dinners, I had lost my son, not to time, but to resentment. But as I sat there in the darkness, one thought began to take shape in my mind. Maybe this wasn't just about the wedding. Maybe this was my chance to finally face the truth. I wasn't going to send him the money. But I wasn't going to disappear either. If I was ever going to reach him again, I needed to show him who his father really was, not the man his mother described, not the man he thought I'd become, but me, the man who loved him, the man who was still waiting. I whispered softly to myself, "All right, Ethan, if this is how you want it, then we'll see what happens next." And for the first time in years, instead of feeling broken, I felt something else. Determined. The storm outside raged on, but inside, something stirred, a small spark, fragile but fierce. Because I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't the end of our story. It was just the beginning. I sat there for a long moment, staring at the email on my laptop screen, unable to process the words written in bold black font. "Dad, since you couldn't make it to the wedding, I'm sending over the invoice for the costs you agreed to cover. The total comes to $79,842. You can transfer it to the account listed below. Hope you understand." My first reaction wasn't anger. It was disbelief. My son, Jacob, had banned me from his wedding, told me not to show up, said it was his day and my presence would ruin it, and yet here he was, expecting me to foot the entire bill. I scrolled down, eyes skimming over the attached PDF. There it was, every expense neatly listed. Venue, $25,000. Catering, $12,000. Designer wedding dress, $9,800. Honeymoon to the Maldives, $18,500. Photographer, band, decorations, and other details filling the rest. At the bottom was the kicker, total due, $79,842, due by next Friday. My chest tightened. For a moment, I thought it was a joke. Some cruel prank from a hacker, maybe. But no, the tone, the phrasing, the signature, it was unmistakably Jacob. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my temples, my mind replaying the last conversation we'd had before the wedding invitation fiasco. It was 3 months ago, at a small cafe downtown. Jacob had asked to meet, to talk about the wedding. I'd been hopeful then, thinking maybe it was a chance to mend things. We hadn't been close for years, ever since my divorce from his mother, but I still held on to the hope that time would heal. He'd shown up late, wearing his usual designer jacket, scrolling through his phone as he sat down. "Dad," he said casually, "so the wedding's in October. We're finalizing the venue this week. I just need you to confirm that you'll cover the major costs like we talked about." I frowned, trying to recall the conversation he was referring to. "Jacob, I said I'd help with the expenses, not cover everything." He sighed, frustrated already. "Come on, Dad. You know Mom can't afford much after the move. And it's not like you don't have the money. You've been saving for years, right?" I'd felt a pang of guilt then, but I stayed firm. "I'll contribute, but you and Claire should also manage within your budget. It's your wedding." He'd rolled his eyes. "You don't get it. This isn't just any wedding. It's a once-in-a-lifetime event. Claire's family is expecting something grand. We can't just do a backyard barbecue." I chuckled softly, hoping to ease the tension. A small, meaningful ceremony can be just as special. He'd glared at me, stood up abruptly, and said, "Forget it, Dad. You've never understood me or supported what matters to me. I'll handle it myself." Then he'd walked out, leaving his untouched coffee behind. I hadn't heard from him since, until that email. As I sat in my office now, staring at the absurd invoice, anger slowly began to replace the shock. He didn't even invite me, didn't want me there, but still expected me to pay? I clicked reply and began typing. Jacob, I'm not sure what kind of joke this is, but sending me a bill after banning me from your wedding is beyond insulting. I will not be paying for something I wasn't even allowed to attend. If you'd like to discuss this like adults, you know where to find me. I hovered over the send button but hesitated. My heart told me to send it. My head told me to wait. I didn't want to make things worse. I closed the laptop instead and went for a walk. The evening air was cool and quiet. I passed by neighbors trimming their lawns, couples walking their dogs, laughter drifting from the nearby park. But my mind was miles away, on my son, on the wedding I wasn't allowed to witness, and on the growing chasm between us. When Jacob was little, he'd follow me everywhere. Fishing trips, Sunday markets, fixing the old car in the garage. He'd once said, "Dad, when I get married, I want you to be my best man." Now, he didn't even want me in the room. I sat on a park bench and watched the sun dip below the horizon, its last light painting the clouds in gold and purple. Something inside me broke a little more that evening. The next day, my phone buzzed with a new message from Jacob's fiancée, Claire. "Hi, Mr. Reynolds. I know Jacob already sent the invoice, but I just wanted to follow up. We're relying on your contribution since everything's been booked. Hope to hear from you soon. Claire." Her tone was polite, but there was an underlying sense of entitlement, as if this was all expected, normal even. I typed back slowly. "Claire, I wish you and Jacob all the happiness in the world, but I was not part of your wedding plans. I was not invited, consulted, or respected in this process. Therefore, I will not be paying for any expenses. Sincerely, Richard Reynolds." A few minutes later, my phone rang. It was Jacob. His voice was sharp, angry. "Dad, what the hell is this? You're refusing to pay? You promised." "I never promised to pay for everything," I said calmly. "You banned me from your wedding, Jacob. You made that choice. You can't cut me out of your life and still expect my money." "That's not fair," he snapped. "You're my father. It's your responsibility to support me." "I have supported you," I replied, my patience thinning. "Your college, your first car, your rent for 2 years. But this? This isn't about support. It's about control." There was silence on the other end for a moment, then he said coldly, "If you don't send the money, don't bother calling me again." My own son had turned me into a stranger. I sat in my study one evening, staring at a photo on my bookshelf. Jacob, age 10, wearing his oversized baseball cap backward, his arms slung proudly around my shoulder. We'd just won his first Little League championship. His grin was wide, his cheeks sunburnt, and his eyes sparkled with trust. Where had that boy gone? I thought about calling him again. Maybe to apologize, even though I wasn't the one in the wrong. But pride and pain kept me still. Instead, I made a decision. I wouldn't send a single dollar. Not because of revenge or stubbornness, but because it was time Jacob learned something about respect, responsibility, and gratitude. The next morning, I was sipping my coffee when the doorbell rang. When I opened it, a man in a delivery uniform handed me a thick envelope. "Delivery for Richard Reynolds. Signature, please." I signed, puzzled. Inside was a formal letter from a law firm, Carter and Mills Associates. My stomach tightened as I unfolded the papers. It was a demand notice. According to the document, Jacob and his fiancée were claiming I had made a verbal agreement to cover the full wedding and honeymoon expenses. They were now seeking payment of $80,000, or they would pursue legal action to recover damages for breach of promise. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My hands trembled slightly as I read the paragraph again and again. I whispered to myself, "He's suing me? My own son." The words felt unreal, like they belonged to someone else's life. Later that afternoon, I called my lawyer, Mr. Benson, an old friend who'd helped me with my divorce years ago. He arrived at my house that evening, briefcase in hand, his gray eyebrows knit together as he skimmed through the documents. After a few minutes, he looked up and sighed. "Richard, this is absurd. There's no legal ground here. A verbal agreement for a wedding? Even if there was, it's unenforceable. They don't have a case." I nodded weakly. "But it's Jacob, Ben. My son. I can't believe he'd go this far." Mr. Benson leaned back in his chair. "Sometimes money blinds people. Or pride. But you did nothing wrong. Don't let guilt make you give in." He paused, studying my face. "Do you want me to respond formally?" I hesitated. "Not yet. I want to talk to him first. Maybe I can make him see reason." That night, I tried calling Jacob. No answer. I tried again the next morning. Straight to voicemail. By the third day, his number was blocked. It was like I didn't exist. Then, one evening, as I was locking up for the night, I received a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Dad." It was Claire. Her voice was nervous, quiet. "Claire," I said, trying to steady my tone, "why are you two doing this? You know this is ridiculous." She sighed softly. "I know, Mr. Reynolds. I told Jacob this isn't right. But he's upset. He feels like you've always favored your work over him. That this was your chance to make things right." "By paying $80,000? I asked bitterly. There was silence on the line for a moment before she whispered, "He's angry. But deep down, I think he just wants your attention." I laughed softly, but it wasn't out of amusement. "Well, he's got it. In the worst way possible. Please, just don't escalate things," Claire pleaded. "Give him time." "Time," I echoed. "He's threatening to sue his own father." Before she could respond, I heard Jacob's voice in the background, sharp and demanding. "Claire, who are you talking to?" The line went dead. The next few days were a blur. Mr. Benson sent a response letter, denying any legal obligation. But emotionally, the damage was done. The story had spread through the family like wildfire. My sister called, sounding hesitant. "Richard, I heard about Jacob. Is it true? He's taking you to court." I didn't know how to answer. Then came the whispers, from old friends, neighbors, even co-workers. Everyone seemed to have an opinion. Some thought I must have broken a promise. Others called Jacob spoiled and ungrateful. But none of it mattered. What hurt most wasn't public embarrassment. It was losing my son completely. A week later, Mr. Benson called. "They've withdrawn the claim," he said. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. "They did?" "Yes. likely realized they had no case. But they did send one more email through the firm. My heart sank. What did it say? He read it aloud. Mr. Reynolds, while we will not pursue legal action, consider our relationship over. Please do not attempt to contact Jacob or Claire again. My throat tightened. I whispered, he really means it, doesn't he? Mr. Benson sighed. I'm afraid so. In the weeks that followed, I tried to move on. But it was impossible. Everywhere I turned, there were reminders. The empty photo frames, the fishing rods collecting dust in the garage, the birthday cards he used to draw when he was little. Then one evening, something strange happened. I received a letter, handwritten, no return address. I opened it, and my hands froze. It was from Jacob's mother, my ex-wife, Linda. Richard, I heard about what happened between you and Jacob. I'm not writing to take sides, but you should know he's been under a lot of pressure. Claire's family has been pushing him hard, making him feel like he has to prove himself. Maybe he took it out on you because you're the easiest target. Still, I thought you deserved to know that deep down, he's hurting too. He's not a bad kid, Richard. Just lost. Maybe one day he'll find his way back. I stared at the letter for a long time, my eyes blurring. Lost, I whispered. Yeah, maybe we both are. Months passed. I didn't hear from Jacob or Claire again. The wedding photos popped up on social media eventually, a perfect fairy tale ceremony by the ocean. Everyone smiling, laughing. Everyone except me. But life, as it always does, went on. Then, one evening in late spring, I received another unexpected call. This time, from an unfamiliar number, but the voice on the other end made my heart skip. Dad. It was Jacob. His tone was different, softer, uncertain. Jacob. I breathed, gripping the phone tightly. Is that really you? Yeah, he said quietly. Can we talk? And just like that, a flicker of hope lit up inside me. Because maybe, just maybe, the fallout was finally over, and something new was about to begin. I sat frozen for a moment, phone pressed to my ear, afraid that if I said the wrong thing, the fragile moment would shatter. Jacob, I said finally, my voice low but steady, of course we can talk. There was a pause. I could hear faint street noise in the background. Cars, wind, maybe a bit of rain. Then his voice again, quieter this time. I'm sorry, Dad. For everything. For a moment, I couldn't respond. All the pain, anger, and confusion that had built up over the past months welled up inside me. Are you really? I asked softly. Because you didn't just cut me out, Jacob. You tried to destroy me. I know, he said, his voice breaking. I know I went too far. I wasn't thinking straight. Not thinking straight? I let out a humorless laugh. You banned me from your wedding, sent me a bill for $80,000, and then tried to sue me. That's not a lapse in judgment, Jacob. That's a declaration of war. I deserve that, he said quietly. You're right. There was a silence on the line. Finally, I sighed, rubbing my forehead. Why now? Why are you calling me after all this time? He took a deep breath. Because I need to tell you the truth about the wedding. About everything. I agreed to meet him that evening at a small diner on the edge of town, the same one we used to visit when he was in high school after his baseball games. The irony wasn't lost on me. When I walked in, I saw him immediately. He was sitting in a corner booth, head down, stirring a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. He looked older somehow. Not physically, but tired, worn down by something heavier than time. When he finally looked up and saw me, his eyes were glassy with guilt. "Hey, Dad," he said softly. I nodded, sliding into the booth across from him. "Hey." For a few moments, neither of us spoke. The low hum of conversation and the clinking of dishes filled the silence between us. Then Jacob exhaled. "You deserve to know what really happened." He began slowly, hesitantly. After Mom moved away, things got complicated. Claire's family wasn't exactly thrilled that I didn't come from money. They're the kind of people who care more about appearances than love. I stayed silent, letting him continue. "They didn't want a small wedding," he said bitterly. "They wanted a spectacle, a five-star resort, a live band, drones filming everything, a private honeymoon in the Maldives." Claire kept saying it was her dream wedding, and her parents kept hinting that if I couldn't pay for it, maybe I wasn't ready to marry their daughter. "So you promised something you couldn't afford," I said quietly. He nodded, ashamed. "Yeah. I thought I could take out a loan, maybe use some savings. But the costs just kept piling up. Every week, there was a new essential thing we had to add. By the time I realized I was drowning, it was too late." "And that's when you decided to come after me?" I asked, unable to hide the bitterness in my tone. He winced. "No, not at first. I tried to talk to Claire about cutting things down, but she said it would embarrass her family. I didn't want to fight, so I told her I'd figure it out." Jacob leaned forward, his voice trembling slightly. "Dad, when I met you at that cafe, I was desperate. I didn't want to admit how bad things were. I thought if you just agreed to help, everything would be fine." I stared at him, remembering that day, the arrogance in his tone, the way he'd stormed out. "You didn't tell me the truth," I said flatly. He nodded. "I know. And when you said no, I panicked. I felt like I was losing control of everything." Then Claire's parents started questioning if I could even support their daughter, and she said maybe I was proving them right. He swallowed hard. "That's when I told her you'd promised to pay for it." "I lied, Dad. I told her you'd cover everything, and that you were just being difficult." My stomach sank. So that's why the bill came. She thought it was already agreed. "Exactly," Jacob said miserably. "She sent the invoice thinking you'd just pay it and we'd all move on. But when you refused, everything exploded. Claire blamed me. Her parents called me a fraud, and I didn't know what to do. I was angry and humiliated, and instead of taking responsibility, I blamed you." "And the lawsuit?" I asked quietly. He dropped his gaze. "That was her father's idea. He said it would scare you into paying. I went along with it because I didn't want to lose face." I closed my eyes for a moment, feeling both furious and heartbroken. "So you let them turn you against your own father," I said softly. Jacob's voice cracked. "I know. I was stupid. I thought money would fix everything, that if I could just make the wedding happen, it would all work out. But it didn't." "What happened after?" He gave a humorless laugh. "After the honeymoon, everything fell apart. We argued constantly about debt, about money, about pride. 2 months ago, she left. Moved back with her parents. The marriage lasted 6 months. I didn't know what to say. My son had lost everything: his marriage, his dignity, his peace. For a long time, we sat there in silence. Then I said quietly, "Jacob, I don't hate you. I'm disappointed, yes, but I don't hate you. I never stopped loving you." His eyes welled up. "I didn't deserve your love, Dad." "Maybe not then," I said gently, "but you do now, because you finally told me the truth." After that, the tension seemed to melt away, replaced by something fragile but real: honesty. Jacob looked out the diner window, his expression distant. "You know, during the wedding, I kept thinking something was missing. Everyone was there: Claire's family, her friends, but not you. I told myself I didn't care. But when I stood at the altar, I kept looking around, hoping you'd walk in anyway." I smiled faintly. "If I'd known you wanted me there, I would have come." "I know," he said softly. "And that's what makes it worse. You always show up, even when I don't deserve it." We sat there for hours, talking about everything: the past, my divorce with his mother, the years we lost to silence. By the time we stepped out of the diner, the night air was cool, and the streetlights cast a soft glow on the wet pavement. Jacob turned to me before we parted. "Dad, I don't expect forgiveness overnight. I just want to make things right. Maybe we can start over." I put a hand on his shoulder. "That's all I ever wanted, son." That night, as I drove home, something in me felt lighter, like a storm had finally passed. For the first time in years, I felt hope. Not for the money or the apology, but for us. Maybe this was the truth behind the wedding, that sometimes it takes losing everything to finally see what really matters. And for Jacob and me, it wasn't about grand ceremonies, luxury honeymoons, or expensive gestures. It was about something far simpler: family, forgiveness, and the love that manages to survive even when everything else falls apart. 3 weeks had passed since the wedding, a wedding I was never invited to but still haunted my every thought. The house had returned to its familiar silence, but it wasn't a comforting one anymore. Every time I passed the framed pictures of my son growing up, from his first day of kindergarten to his graduation day, I felt a deep ache in my chest. I tried to move on. I went for walks, volunteered at the local library, and even started painting again. But nothing could fully drown out the pain of being deliberately cut off from my own child's most important day. Then, one morning, as I was watering the small patch of roses in my backyard, I noticed a thick envelope sticking out of my mailbox. My name, Margaret Thompson, was written on the front in my son's handwriting. I froze. My first instinct was to tear it open immediately, but something stopped me. My hands trembled as I carried it inside. I placed it on the dining table and just stared at it for a few minutes, trying to calm my racing heart. After weeks of silence, why now? Finally, I sat down, took a deep breath, and opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, 2 full pages of handwritten words, and a small folded document tucked behind it. I recognized his handwriting instantly. Careful, slightly slanted, the way he always wrote when he wanted to sound serious. I unfolded the letter, my hands still shaking. "Mom, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from right now. I also know that what I did, banning you from the wedding, was cruel, and you don't deserve the way I treated you. But before you decide to throw this letter away, please hear me out. There are things you don't know about that day, and about Emily's family. Things I only recently found out myself. I thought I was doing the right thing when I sided with Emily and her parents. I thought you were being difficult, controlling, or that you didn't approve of her. That's what they made me believe. They convinced me that you were trying to embarrass them, that you didn't support us, that you were going to make a scene at the wedding. But now I know that wasn't true. A few days before the wedding, I found out Emily and her parents had kept some things from me, about the finances, the guest list, even the budget. You were right all along about the money. They planned everything behind my back, but they used your name as the scapegoat. When I confronted them, they told me you refused to pay your share. That's why they sent you the $80,000 bill. But that wasn't the truth, was it? They told me you had promised to fund the entire thing, including our honeymoon. They showed me fake messages and emails that I now know were fabricated. They had someone pretend to be you in texts, agreeing to cover the costs. I can't even begin to tell you how angry and ashamed I felt when I realized it. Mom, I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness right away, but I need you to know that what happened wasn't your fault. You didn't deserve to be humiliated or accused or cut out of my life. There's more to this story, but it's not something I can write in a letter. Please, if you can, meet me this Saturday at our old cafe downtown, the one you used to take me to after my soccer games. I'll be there at noon. If you don't come, I'll understand. But I hope you do. Love, Daniel. I sat there for a long time, rereading the letter over and over again. Each word dug deep into me. Pain, relief, confusion, all tangled together. Fake messages? Lies? Fabrications? Could Emily and her parents really have gone that far? It almost felt too absurd to believe. But the sincerity in Daniel's letter, that was real. For the first time in months, I felt something shift inside me. I unfolded the second document tucked behind the letter. It was a copy of a financial statement from a catering company, signed not by me, but by Emily's father. He had apparently used my name and signature to authorize several wedding expenses. My hands went cold. I wasn't just excluded, I was being framed. The days leading up to Saturday felt endless. I replayed every conversation I'd ever had with Emily, every smirk, every subtle insult, every time she made Daniel question me. The realization that she had orchestrated all of it filled me with both fury and sorrow. Saturday finally came. I arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early. The small bell above the door jingled as I stepped inside, the familiar scent of roasted coffee beans and warm pastries wrapping around me like a memory. I chose a corner table and ordered 2 cappuccinos. My heart raced with every passing minute. Then, at exactly noon, Daniel walked in. He looked different, thinner, older, like he'd aged years in just a few months. His usually neat hair was unkempt, and his eyes were tired. When he saw me, he froze near the doorway, guilt written all over his face. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then, slowly, he walked toward me. "Hi, Mom," he said quietly. I managed a small, shaky smile. "Hi, Daniel." He sat down across from me, his eyes flicking to the coffee. "You remembered how I like it," he said softly. "I never forget," I replied. The silence that followed was heavy. Finally, he sighed. "Mom, I don't know where to start. I feel like I've ruined everything." I reached across the table and placed my hand over his. "Just tell me the truth." He nodded, swallowing hard. Emily's parents, they wanted a huge, extravagant wedding. They said it would reflect well on their family's reputation. But I couldn't afford it. When I told them, they said they'd handle it, but only if you helped. Then, a few weeks later, they showed me screenshots of texts supposedly from you, agreeing to pay for everything. When I asked you about it, Emily said you denied it because you were jealous or controlling. My heart sank. So, you believed her? He looked down, ashamed. I did. I wanted to believe her. She made me think you were trying to sabotage us. I didn't even question it. I was so blind. Tears filled my eyes, but I held them back. And now? He rubbed his face. I found the original invoices and the forged documents after the honeymoon. Emily's father had used your name on the contracts. When I confronted Emily, she said it was just a formality. But I knew it wasn't. I filed a report with the police. They're investigating now. I stared at him in shock. The police? Yes, he said. And Mom. I left her. For a moment, the cafe seemed to go silent. You left Emily? He nodded. I couldn't stay with someone who could lie like that. She destroyed my relationship with you just to get money and control. I'm staying with a friend right now. I don't even know what comes next. I squeezed his hand. What comes next, I said softly, is rebuilding. We spent the next 2 hours talking, really talking, for the first time in years. He told me everything. How the wedding had gone, how Emily had isolated him from his friends, and how she'd convinced him that I was toxic. When we finally stood to leave, Daniel looked at me with tears in his eyes. Mom, can you ever forgive me? I looked at him, my heart full of both pain and love. Forgiveness takes time, Daniel. But I'm willing to try, if you are. He nodded, his voice trembling. I am. More than anything. As he walked me to my car, a small breeze rustled the trees. For the first time in months, the world felt a little lighter. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. There were still consequences waiting to unfold, legal, emotional, and moral. The truth had finally surfaced, but it had left cracks that would take more than an apology to heal. Still, as I drove home, I caught myself smiling faintly for the first time in a long time. My son had found his way back to me, and maybe, just maybe, we could begin again. When Daniel and I met at the cafe that day, I thought that was the beginning of our healing. But as the days passed, I realized forgiveness wasn't a single act. It was a process, long and painfully uncertain. He called me every evening after work. Sometimes we'd talk for hours, other times only a few minutes. It was as though we were both relearning how to speak to each other, how to rebuild the bridge that had burned so completely between us. But forgiveness, I learned, had a price. Not just emotional, but practical, too. A week after our meeting, I received another call from Daniel. His voice was low, hesitant. Mom, I need to talk to you about something, he said. I sat down, already bracing myself. Go ahead, sweetheart. He took a deep breath. Emily's father. He's threatening legal action. He claims you were the one who agreed to pay for the wedding, and that you're now refusing to honor the contract. My chest tightened. What? After everything that came out? I know. It's insane, Daniel said, his frustration evident. But he's saying you signed those documents. Even though we both know they were forged, he's betting on the fact that the contracts have your name and a signature that looks like yours. I was silent for a long moment, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. Daniel, that's fraud. They can't possibly win. I've already hired a lawyer, he said. But it's going to get messy. They're trying to ruin you, to make you look like a liar. I felt a cold wave wash over me. For a moment, all I could hear was the faint hum of the refrigerator and the beating of my own heart. Mom, Daniel continued softly, I'll handle the legal costs. This isn't your fight to pay for. No, I said firmly. It is my fight. They dragged my name through the mud, Daniel. I won't sit quietly while they try to destroy what's left of my reputation. 2 days later, I found myself sitting across from a lawyer named Catherine Lewis. She was sharp, confident, and spoke with the calm authority of someone who'd seen every kind of legal mess imaginable. After reviewing the forged documents and the letter Daniel had sent me, she nodded slowly. They've built a house of lies, but we can tear it down. The forged signature is your biggest defense. Do you have proof of your handwriting? Yes, I said, handing her an old lease agreement and my signed checks. She compared them carefully. It's not a match, she said. We'll have a handwriting expert verify this. And the fact that they impersonated you in messages, if we can get those texts authenticated, it'll prove intent to defraud. I leaned back, letting out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. So, there's hope. There's more than hope, Catherine replied with a reassuring smile. There's truth, and that's stronger than anything they've built. Still, I knew it wouldn't be easy. Court cases drag on. They expose old wounds, and they test the limits of forgiveness. Over the following weeks, Daniel and I spent hours gathering evidence. He retrieved bank statements, message logs, and even found one of Emily's old voice notes admitting that her father had handled the wedding finances in Margaret's name. Every piece of evidence was a knife in the heart, but also a step closer to justice. We met often during those days, sitting across from each other in my kitchen, the same table where we'd once shared birthday cakes and late-night talks. Sometimes we laughed at old memories. Other times we sat in silence, the weight of the past hanging between us. One evening, Daniel looked at me with watery eyes. Mom, I don't know if I deserve your forgiveness. I believed people who didn't care about me. I hurt the one person who always did. I reached across the table and touched his hand gently. Forgiveness isn't about deserving, Daniel. It's about healing. For both of us. He nodded slowly, tears slipping down his cheeks. I can't stop thinking about how I yelled at you that night. The way I said you'd ruin my life if you showed up to the wedding. I smiled sadly. We've both said things we regret. What matters is what we do now. He took a deep breath. Then I'll do whatever it takes to make it right. The court hearing was scheduled for early April. Emily's family arrived in sleek black suits, confident and smug. Emily herself avoided my gaze, her expression cold and distant. I could see Daniel struggle not to look at her. When our lawyer presented the evidence, the falsified contracts, the message forgeries, and the expert's handwriting analysis, the courtroom went silent. The judge's expression hardened as the lies unraveled, one by one. At one point, Emily's father tried to interrupt, shouting that I was just trying to ruin his daughter's happiness. But the judge quickly silenced him. In that moment, I realized something profound. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant finding peace, even while standing your ground. The ruling came swiftly. The judge declared the contracts invalid and ordered Emily's family to pay restitution for damages and legal costs. When it was over, I felt a strange mix of victory and emptiness. Daniel hugged me tightly outside the courthouse. "It's over, Mom," he said softly. "No," I whispered. "It's just beginning." He looked at me, puzzled. "I mean our beginning," I said with a faint smile. "We can finally move forward." A few weeks later, Daniel helped me repaint the living room. It was his idea, a fresh start, he'd said. As we painted the walls a soft cream color, laughter returned to the house for the first time in years. We took breaks, shared coffee, and talked about everything we'd missed. He told me about how lonely his marriage had been, how Emily's family constantly criticized him, made him feel inadequate, and turned his love into guilt. "I thought love meant sacrifice," he said, his voice heavy. "But it shouldn't mean giving up who you are, or the people who raised you." I nodded. "Love without respect isn't love, Daniel. It's control." He sighed. "You're right. I see that now." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light through the window, I looked at my son, my boy, once lost, now finding his way back. Forgiveness still hurt. There were moments when resentment crept in like an uninvited guest. But every time I saw the remorse in his eyes, I reminded myself, people make mistakes. Sometimes terrible ones. But acknowledging them is the first step toward redemption. Months later, Daniel called me again. "Mom," he said, sounding lighter than I'd heard him in years, "I got a promotion at work. And I've been seeing someone." "Oh." I smiled. "Tell me about her." "She's kind, thoughtful, and she knows what I've been through." I told her everything. "That's good," I said. "You deserve someone honest, Daniel." He hesitated for a moment before adding, "I wouldn't have gotten through any of this without you." I felt a lump rise in my throat. That's what mothers are for. After hanging up, I sat by the window, watching the evening sky fade into shades of purple and gold. The storm that had once torn my family apart had finally passed. What remained was quieter, but stronger. Forgiveness, I realized, wasn't about erasing pain. It was about transforming it. About choosing peace, even when you've been wronged. And though the scars remained, they no longer defined me, or Daniel. The price of forgiveness had been steep, trust broken, love tested, dignity challenged, but in paying it I had regained something priceless, my son's heart. The morning sun filtered gently through my kitchen window, bathing everything in a warm golden glow. The house felt different now, lighter, quieter, but in the best way possible. I had spent months living in a cloud of tension and pain, but finally I felt the first signs of peace. It had been 6 months since the court ruling. 6 months since Daniel's world, and mine, had come crashing down and slowly begun to rebuild, brick by brick. Forgiveness had not been easy, but every conversation, every small act of kindness between us, had helped stitch together the torn fabric of our bond. That morning, as I poured myself a cup of tea, my phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. "Morning, Mom. Big day today. Hope you're ready." I smiled. Today was special. Daniel had invited me to a small family gathering, his first since everything had happened. It wasn't just any gathering, though. It was a celebration of his new beginning, his engagement to Anna, the woman who had helped him rediscover what love and trust really meant. I picked out a soft blue dress, simple but elegant, and tied my hair back. As I looked at my reflection in the mirror, I caught myself smiling. Not the forced kind I'd worn for years, but a real, honest smile. For the first time in a long while, I was proud of where life had taken me. Not because everything was perfect, but because I'd survived what was meant to break me. The event was held at a small countryside restaurant overlooking a lake. When I arrived, I saw Daniel waiting near the entrance, his face lighting up as soon as he spotted me. "Mom," he said, rushing over to hug me tightly. I could feel his heartbeat against my chest. "You made it." "Of course I did," I said softly. "I wouldn't miss it for the world." He stepped back, grinning from ear to ear. "You look beautiful." "Flattery will get you everywhere," I teased. He laughed, and for a moment it was like we had turned back time, back to when he was a boy running around in the garden, laughing without care. Inside, the room was cozy and decorated with white lilies, candles, and framed photos of Daniel and Anna. The air was filled with laughter, warmth, and the scent of fresh bread and roasted herbs. Anna approached me with a kind smile. She was tall, with gentle brown eyes and an aura of quiet strength. "Mrs. Reynolds," she said warmly, extending her hand. "Please call me Margaret," I replied, shaking her hand. "And congratulations." "Thank you," she said sincerely. "I've heard so much about you. Daniel talks about you all the time." I smiled, glancing at my son. "I hope it's all good things." "Mostly," Anna said playfully, and we both laughed. As the afternoon went on, we shared stories, toasted to love and new beginnings, and, for the first time, I felt truly accepted again, not just as a mother, but as part of Daniel's life. Later that evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in streaks of orange and violet, Daniel and I stepped outside to sit by the lake. The water shimmered like glass, and the cool breeze carried the soft hum of crickets. He leaned back on the bench, looking out over the water. "You know," he said quietly, "I didn't think we'd ever get here." I looked at him, my heart softening. "Neither did I." He smiled faintly. "There were times I thought I'd lost you forever. I still can't believe how blind I was." "You weren't blind, Daniel," I said gently. "You were hurt. And hurt people often end up hurting others, even without meaning to." He nodded slowly. "I just wish I'd realized sooner. I wasted so much time being angry at you for things you didn't do." I placed my hand over his. "Time doesn't matter as long as we learn. You came back, and that's what counts." He turned to me, his eyes filled with gratitude. "You could have walked away. After everything I said, after the way I treated you, you had every right to. But you didn't." I smiled softly. "That's what mothers do. We don't stop loving our children, no matter how lost they get." He exhaled deeply, looking up at the darkening sky. "Anna said something the other day that stuck with me. She said, sometimes love has to be broken before it can be rebuilt stronger." I nodded. "She's a wise woman." He chuckled. "She really is. And she wants to get to know you better. Maybe even have you help plan the wedding." I blinked, surprised. "Me? Are you sure?" He grinned. "Positive. I think we've both learned that weddings should be about family, not money or appearances." I laughed softly. "I'd be honored, Daniel." A week later, I joined Anna and Daniel at their new home to help with the wedding plans. It was a small, sunlit apartment filled with books, plants, and warmth, so different from the cold perfection of his life before. As we went over color schemes and guest lists, I noticed how relaxed Daniel seemed. He laughed easily, listened attentively, and smiled every time Anna spoke. It was clear she brought out the best in him. At one point, while Anna was in the kitchen, Daniel leaned toward me and said, "Mom, I'm starting to understand what real love looks like." I smiled. "And what's that?" He thought for a moment. "It's quiet. Steady. It doesn't demand or manipulate. It just is." I nodded. "That's the kind of love worth building a life on." He looked down, his voice soft. "I think I finally found it." The months leading up to the wedding passed quickly. There was laughter, shared dinners, and even lazy Sunday mornings spent reading in the garden. Slowly, my heart healed in ways I hadn't thought possible. On the day of Daniel and Anna's wedding, the ceremony took place in a small chapel surrounded by trees. There were only close friends and family. No extravagant decorations, no flashing cameras, just love and sincerity. As Daniel stood at the altar, his eyes found mine across the room. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. I saw the little boy who used to tug at my hand when he was scared. I saw the teenager who once slammed his bedroom door during our biggest fights. I saw the man he had become, wiser, humbler, and full of love. And as he mouthed the words, "Thank you," tears welled up in my eyes. When the ceremony ended, he came over and hugged me tightly. "Mom," he whispered, "I'm sorry it took me so long to understand." I smiled through my tears. "You're here now, Daniel. That's all that matters." That night, after the wedding, I returned home and sat on my porch beneath the stars. The air was cool, and the world felt quiet and safe again. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the weight of the past pressing on me. The pain had finally settled into something gentler, something I could live with. Forgiveness hadn't erased what happened. It hadn't made everything perfect, but it had given me peace. Sometimes I thought about the version of Daniel who once sent that cruel email, the one demanding payment for a wedding I wasn't allowed to attend. And instead of bitterness, I felt gratitude. Because that moment of betrayal had led us here, to honesty, understanding, and love reborn from ashes. Life, I realized, has a strange way of teaching lessons. Some are harsh, others gentle, but all are necessary. As the wind rustled the trees and the moon cast silver light across the garden, I whispered to myself, "This is what new beginnings feel like." And somewhere deep inside, I knew that the story of heartbreak and loss had finally become one of grace and redemption. And that was the end of Margaret and Daniel's story, a story of pain, distance, and the high price of forgiveness. Sometimes it takes losing everything to realize what truly matters. Daniel learned that love cannot be bought, and Margaret discovered that forgiveness, though costly, brings the truest peace. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heartfelt life stories that inspire, heal, and stay with you long after the night falls. Thank you for listening. And until next time, may your heart always find peace in forgiveness.